afternoon to all. It's wonderful to be here this afternoon. What I'm going to be talking about this afternoon in my remarks is the importance of food policy in a healthy food system. So why is food policy so important in a healthy food system? We probably all know here that the world is not eating well. Even if we go to our very youngest children, 75% of them are not consuming what the United Nations classify as a minimal acceptable diet. When we go to school children, 30% of them aren't eating fruit every day, and yet 44% of them are consuming sugar-sweetened beverages every day. And this huge growth in industrially produced, commercial packaged foods, new data is telling us that around 70% of them are not aligned with good health. So it's a question of too much of the wrong kinds of foods on the one hand, and too little of the right kinds of foods on the other. And that has very important nutritional implications. We now have millions of young children, billions of adults who experience overweight and obesity. But on the other hand, we have children who have so few nutritious foods that they are not consuming enough to help them grow properly, and therefore they are stunted. The common cause of both these forms of malnutrition is a poor diet. And a poor diet is also important in micronutrient deficiencies such as vitamin A, anemia, zinc deficiency. And these problems are so widespread that it means that every country in the world experiences some form of malnutrition, whether it's overweight and obesity, micronutrient deficiency, or stunting, or other forms such as underweight. And because malnutrition leads to early mortality, because it has a whole host of health conditions associated with it, it's no surprise that a poor diet is now estimated to be the leading cause of early death in the world today. So food appears to be a curse for our health, but in fact it's really a blessing. What this slide shows is that people who do not consume sufficient amounts of fiber, of legumes, of fruits, vegetables, of whole grains, of fish, are more likely to die of heart diseases. But that means if we want to promise a good future for our children, we can help them consume more of these healthier, nutritious foods, which can mean they can live longer and happier lives. So that's the good news. But of course, it's much harder to do this than we'd like it to be. Just imagine you're a caregiver of a child, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a grandparent, anybody who is looking after a child. And you want that child to be healthy. And you make them what you think is a really healthy breakfast, such as this one. What you don't know is that piece of bread is incredibly high in salt. You just don't know that. Then you take your child to school, and on the way to school, there are kiosks and shops selling sugary and salty snacks, trying to grab your child. And then your child starts to pester you. Many of us know how difficult that is to resist, but that we also have no power once we leave our child at the school gate. And then your child goes into school, and they're given a school lunch, which is neither nutritious nor appetizing. And then you go and get some lunch, and the healthier choice is the more expensive choice. And then you go to the supermarket to do some shopping, and you see this cereal packet, and it's not shown here, but it has a big green sign on it saying that it's high in whole grain. So you buy it thinking it's the healthier option. And then you take your children home, and they are exposed to an incredibly large amount of advertising for unhealthy food when they watch television. It's not easy to eat well in the world today. And what the science tells us is that when children are exposed to these kinds of diets, they learn to like them. They learn to become accustomed to them. And then that's the food that they want. They don't want the nutritious foods, but they want the junk foods. Then they take them through into adulthood. They model those dietary habits to their children, and the vicious cycle continues. So let's imagine something different. Let's imagine that bread is not high in salt. Let's imagine that instead of salty snacks, you're exposed to fruit on your way to school. Imagine if that school lunch is both nutritious and delicious. Imagine if the price incentives are aligned, encouraging you to pick the healthier option. Imagine that there is a warning label to show that that product is so high in sugar. And imagine that instead of being exposed to lots of advertising of unhealthy foods, you were exposed to healthy messaging. It's a very, very different food landscape to bring up a child. And that's what food policy can do. That's what food policy ought to do. All of these areas where good public policy can help support you and your child as you go through your day. And governments around the world are putting these policies into place, including right here in Chile. Policies to reduce the amount of salt in food, policies that incentivize new kinds of shops, new business models for shops to grow, policies on school food standards in which link school food with farmers, policies that encourage changes in prices, policies on labeling, and policies on marketing. There are at least 60 countries around the world who have healthy school food standards now. There are at least 30 countries in the world that have policies on taxation of sugary drinks. And the many other countries are taking different types of options to make food landscapes healthier. And we know from the evidence that these policies can work. As individual policies, they have a fairly modest effect, but it's all in the right direction, encouraging children to eat healthier. But food policy can do so much more than that. It can actually create economic opportunity. These are two examples from Australia and the UK, where a health system in Melbourne, in Australia, put into place measures such as hiding away the sugary drinks, increasing the amount of nutritious foods that was on offer. And what did they have to say? That business was better than it was before. In this example from the UK, where vulnerable women are given vouchers to spend on fruits and vegetables, that's leading to boosting trade in local markets. So food policy can help the economy too. But it goes further than that, because food policy is not just about the immediate food landscapes around us. It's about the deeper food system. And food policy can go right down into this food system. It can affect agriculture. It can affect trade. It can affect business. It can affect training and skills and education, which are also a very important part of this piece. In other words, it can dig down deeper into that food system. So this becomes about not just creating health for our children, but about a healthy food system. Food policy, if we had bold decision makers, food policy has the potential to focus firmly on putting nutritious foods at the core of the food system, if it made policy change throughout the whole food system. And by doing that, it could also help create economic prosperity if we put new business models into place, such as producing more nutritious foods in agriculture and putting the incentives in place for that. And because food is so important from an environmental sustainability perspective, it can also help environmental sustainability. So what I have termed the food system sweet spot is when the food system is encouraging and enabling us all to eat healthier, while also leading to economic prosperity and also leading to environmental sustainability. That is the future we want for food policy and the food system. But unfortunately, that's not what we have. Countries around the world are putting different food policies into place to help health. But it's piecemeal, it's a patchwork. They're not covering the entirety of that child's day. They're not doing everything they could, putting all of those policies together. They're not expanding the scope of those policies to make them more comprehensive. They're not tailoring those policies to people's lived realities, which could make them so much more effective, and accompanying them with education and skills and training, which are very important as well. Secondly, food policy is not coherent through the food system. So we have health agencies making a decision about food policy for health over here, and an economic ministry making a decision which clashes, which conflicts with health policy in the economic ministry. We have agricultural policies that clash with trade policies. There is lots of policy conflicts in the food system, and we need to do so much more to align those policies to make them coherent through the food system. And as part of that, we need governments to really take new business models, new economic incentives to change the whole economy of the food system. I believe it's possible when we think about health, economy, and sustainability together. So there's a long way to go. But there are seeds of promise. And these seeds are sprouting in particular at the city level, at the municipal level, where we're seeing cities around the world, whether it be London or here in Santiago, put into place policies which are designed to improve health and to improve the food system more broadly with urban food policy. So this is an exciting place to think of into the future. But whatever level we institute and implement public policy, the future of the food system and the health of nations depends on good food policy. Thank you very much.